You guys are more insulated than we are because you've outlawed our food that's so toxic, it's ridiculous. 72 or 3% of the food we produce over here is subsidized by the government, and whenever it's subsidized, it's ridiculously toxic. You take our wheat crop, it's sprayed with Roundup 2 days to 3 weeks before it's harvested for the last time. Corn is grown with atrazine and Roundup. Those things completely dysregulate every hormonal function that there is. They concentrate that in the corn products, corn syrup, and all of these things. Corn is in everything in America. It's in your tires, your spark plugs, your brake pads, your food. It's in your clothes. I mean, it's in absolutely everything. And those things are toxic. There's no way to get the toxins out. Nobody tests for the toxins. Those toxins, like atrazine that the corn's grown on, it takes a male frog. They'll grow female reproductive systems. They can produce eggs that are fertilizable, turn into tadpoles, highly mutagenic, totally destroys the ability of all males in the whole animal kingdom to produce testosterone. And it turns women's hormones upside down. And that's really the root issue, the sexual crisis going on over here with all that. That is going on with our food. It's destroying our gut health. And as soon as you compromise the gut health, your health is going downhill. So it's pretty much global. We're the forerunners over here.
I found out recently about this, what you're talking about what they're spraying on the crops and stuff. And I found out recently about glyphosate that's being sprayed on crops. And the farmers have to wear hazmat suits to spray it on, yet it's allowed to be in our food.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Glyphosate is what Roundup is made off of, and then they put a surfactant on it's 4 times more powerful. So that's the difference with glyphosate and Roundup. Roundup has a surfactant, it's like soap, so it sticks on the plants more, 4 times more powerful. When that first came out as a product, it was sold as a drain cleaner. And the reason why is it chelates the minerals. It draws the minerals out of the old metal pipes and opens up the holes. Well, that's what it does in the plants. That's what it does in the soil. And that's what it does in us. It takes the minerals and it changes the form so we can't use them. And it shuts down every metabolic function in our body.
So, how much of the food we're eating is actually food?
Okay, I'll state from over here in America, RFK Jr., he's kind of ahead of all that. And he's thrown out a bunch of research. Of all the subsidized food, almost all that goes into highly processed food. And since it's subsidized, they get the product for less. So they put it on the shelf in the grocery stores for less money than real food is. Real food looks like it's a plant. It grew off a plant. You plucked it off a plant. It's not processed. If it's in a box, it's processed. If it's in a can, it's processed. If it's in a bag, it's processed. If it's in the produce aisle, it's not. And the the more processed food you have, the more health problems you have. There's a bunch of different reasons why, and we get into those if you care to.
What about the plant based stuff? Is that organic, or what do you think of that?
Organic isn't what it used to mean. That is a term that a grower has to pay a lot of money to get certified as organic. And once they're certified, they throw everything out the door. I know a bunch of people in the organic industry over here in America. They use the same hazmat chemicals on their product as anybody else's. Just when the FDA is going to come check their farm out, they hide it. But water supplies are toxic. The products they use are toxic. When you look at in the organic industry, you're allowed to use neem oil as an herbicide and a pesticide. One of the biggest problems with health issues is its inability to process oils. Anybody that has a problem with processing oils, neem oil is highly toxic too. So even your organic products are extremely toxic and people can't eat those. So you're better off going to farmers markets where you have open markets where farmers come and they sell their produce. You can talk to the farmer, you can find out how they grow. It's generally cleaner than organic. It's non-certified organic. It's generally cleaner than organic, and you can tell by talking to farmer by their growing practices whether that food is going to be clean or not. You just got to ask some simple questions like, how do you feed your plants? If they tell you they spray stuff on their plants, they don't know what they're doing. Their food's toxic. If they say we don't feed our plants, we feed our soil, the plants feed off the soil, that person knows what they're talking about, and their food's probably good.
So you mentioned about that now farmers have to like almost pay to have organic food. Is that the reason why things like fruits and vegetables really skyrocketed in price?
It's we've got a whole bunch of different reasons why those things happen. We've been in global economies for quite a while. That wasn't a smart decision over here in America, and I think he started this for all of the Western world, so that's Europe too, is with NAFTA, North America Free Trade Agreement, what Bill Clinton started, it it broke all the trade tariffs, which protected local economies from invasion of other countries producing stuff at a lesser wage. So it secured industry and all that, and that dysregulated all of those things. Now you got things coming from all over the world, and most of those are courted with the pharmaceutical companies that you got a close association with pharmaceutical companies, big ag companies producing the agricultural chemicals also. And most of the countries that are in the spin like this, they're manipulated by those that they have to use those chemicals, which now goes globally. So it's a real problem in not growing things locally. Oh, that kind of, that addresses that because there's no control when it comes from a foreign place.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that you should try and eat as organic as possible, farmers markets and stuff. I know they're becoming more popular now. I see them more often than I ever did before, but there's a big problem with this is eating organic or eating as healthy as possible. It's become a little bit unattainable for the normal person. Like it's almost like the money that people make, it doesn't match what a shopping list of organic and healthy food would actually cost.
If you go to farmers markets, that's not necessarily the case. If you go to the grocery store, that is. Um, because when you go to farmers markets, that's how a lot of people make their living. And there's something called a CSA, which farmers will take, they'll sell shares and they produce food throughout the year and they give you weekly a share of what that produce is. And it's different things in different seasons. That's a real cost savings for the consumer to get into a CSA. And I forget what that stands for, but you get a lot of produce as far as that goes. What we've set up in our culture, it's pretty meat centric. In other words, people like to have their diet wrapped around meat. And it's only the Western countries that do that. No other country does that. The the vegetable based diets are way, way more cost effective. Like people do meat for protein. The world staple for protein is beans and rice in Asia and those types of countries, and beans and corn like in South and Central America. Beans and a grain, beans and nuts, beans and mushrooms. There's a few different foods that are balance of protein out so you can get that. And there's a few grains that are completely balanced proteins. We're better off to have a vegetable based protein and supplement that with a little bit of meat, and that really brings your grocery bill down in a
The,
huge way.
these like diets that have become more popular, like things like vegan and vegetarian. I know there's so many more, but I just don't know the names. Are they maybe, because I know they get kind of joked about online and stuff, are they actually maybe the way forward now, especially with how food's being processed?
Good question. When you look at the diets, most of them are fad diets and they're very dangerous. They're unhealthy. You look at keto diet, it completely dysregulates your fats, your blood sugars. It's dangerous. People's bodies stink. You got crotch rot with those things that are hormones are upside down. It's killed people. Paleo, one of the biggest proponents I know of the paleo diet. It's supposed to be a hunter-gatherer type of a diet.
Yeah.
That guy died from the world famous guy. He died at 57 from his second heart attack. So how good did that work? You look at the carnivore diet, there's no nutrients in it. Absolutely, totally dangerous. Turns just your pH upside down and it's screwed up. Most of the people that I know that are vegan have no idea how to balance their proteins, and that is a problem. The A vegan has to know 10 times more about diet to make it healthy than someone who eats a whole food diet. And, I just told you how to balance your proteins. It's like 3 parts beans to 1 part rice or 3 part beans to 1 part corn. You don't want to buy any American corn. It's absolutely toxic. It'll kill you. Russia did studies on our corn, said that found out it increased cancer rates 4 to 7 times. They outlawed it. China left their research. They outlawed it too. But China's one of the biggest buyers of our corn. They have stored, it's way over 60% of the world's grains. China does. So guess what China does with our corn?
Sells it.
They use it to make byproducts and they sell it back to us. They pull the protein out, say it's corn free, but it's still got the atrazine in it. It's still got the glyphosate or Roundup in it. It's it's highly toxic, and the more you concentrate it, the more of those toxins are in there that totally destroy everybody's health and all that. Like over here, almost all the vitamin C comes from fermented corn from China fermenting our corn. It's in all your medications, it's in all your supplements, it's in all your food additives, it's toxic corn. It's concentrated with all these super toxic herbicides we already talked about. So that's a really, really big issue. You got to know where you get your food, like juicing. You want to talk about an expensive diet. Juicing's really expensive. It takes a grocery bag to make a cupful of something. And you don't need to do that. You really don't need to do that. If you got a high-speed blender and make smoothies, you get all the nutrients out of it, and you don't want to destroy all the fiber because that's what gives your gut health. So that one doesn't really make a lot of sense. But if somebody wants to go vegan, if they know what they're doing and they know how to balance their protein, they're very rigid with that because that's where vegan falls apart is their protein. If they know how to do that, you certainly is healthy. But if they don't, their lifespan is 10 years younger than an omnivore.
I tried to almost research this because I found the same thing as you found, that people don't really know how to manage the protein in their diet properly. It's usually why people go so far to one side or the other. Carnivore is pretty much all protein. Then the other side, vegan, like you said, a lot of the times it's nearly none. But I've seen now studies saying that people now are taking supplements more than ever before, and that's probably where they're trying to make up their protein. How much damage is that doing to them that they just don't understand?
Oh, okay. I'm really vested in the supplement industry in a huge way because it's a big part of what we do. When what we used to use before COVID hit, we had to throw like 90% of that away. It became unusable in 6 months to a year after COVID hit because that disrupted the supply chain and people couldn't get things. So they reduced their standards to keep producing product. I'm on in a downline of like over 300,000 doctors that use the supply chains that I use. I've got friends and I've dialogue with people from upper level management, vice president levels, through every level of manufacturing, the quality control people, the people that are doing the testing of product, all the way down to the distributors and the sales reps from that. I've talked to every level of multiple companies. There's a couple of those companies that they'll take notes when I talk to them because I'm the only one who understands these things. But I can test their supplements to find out what's good in them, what's bad in them, what they need to change to fix it, and what's making it so it's no longer therapeutically viable. When we look at fish oil, 75% of the fish oils in the market are rancid before you buy them. If it's not refrigerated, it's rancid. You look at flora products, probiotics, it's worse than that. It's probably over 95% of the probiotics out there are absolutely worthless. We've tested probably hundreds of probiotics, probably hundreds of fish oils. There's two in North America that are worth using, and 95% of the people just use one of those. I have three probiotics to use. I haven't used one of those in over a year. So we're down to two of those. You look at calcium, there's only one in North America we found. And I used to be afraid that the top company that made the absolute best multivitamin was going to quit making it. So we were on a hunt years before thinking that they're going to close it down. And when we got word that they're not going to close it down, but when COVID hit, they reduced their standard and it became non-usable. It's toxic. It creates adverse issues in health. If your supplements are made in a lab, they don't work. All organic molecules are built in nature with a spin to the left. And when you look at chromosome molecules, you see that double helix spinning. It always spins to the left. If it's made in a lab, half of them spin to the left, half spin to the right. What spins to the left is the only thing that's biologically active, viable, and usable. Everything that spins to the right, no good at all. It's easier to spin it to the left. And when you look at double bonds in nature, everything comes in from one side, does a double bond, and goes out the same side. When you make it in a lab, it comes in from the one side, goes across the double bond, and it goes out the opposite side. Everything that goes out the opposite side in a double bond is biologically inert, has no viability whatsoever. So you've got all these factors going on. The building blocks that people use are inferior. That's that's why people are selling all these peptides. You got building blocks for proteins, amino acids, the smallest building block. Then you amino acids build peptides or short chains, and those peptides assemble into these protein chains. The quality of the food that we eat determines the quality of those amino acids, peptides, and proteins. And when you eat poor quality food, there's almost no viability. And that's why our health is going downhill.
Yeah, there was a big dilemma in the UK recently about creatine supplements, and I mean, I don't think people are just knowledgeable enough on like the foods that could give you enough creatine in your daily diet. But creatine has been one of the most bought supplements for years now, and they tested three of the biggest companies' creatine products, and they had from their studies they had like almost zero creatine actually in it. It was pretty much just the powder of whatever it was that was wrote in the back. All the ingredients were still there, just creatine wasn't involved. How many supplements on the market are doing things like that?
That's really huge in your inferior companies. It's pretty common. Your top professional supply companies that only supply a doctor, somebody with a license, healthcare license, they're the one doing cutting edge research. Then you have irresponsible companies. Look at their research. They undercut the way that the manufacturing was done to support their research and sell inferior products that can never give you the benefit of what that research is, but they spend their money in marketing rather than research. And that's rampant everywhere.
What about
And that goes back to the bias that I talked about with research. It's not just a medical institution, the natural health institution with all the supplements. It's the same thing. They manipulate research with bias. We test all those products to see what they do, and the lion's share of the claims that are out there don't work. And we've been testing that on individual basis for 4 decades. Yeah, I've got a pretty long history of having a read on what's going on with testing thousands of people individually, everyone on everything that we give them, and we prove it out. And most of the supplements out there, even professional supply, are unusable.
I do want to stay on this topic of chemicals and toxins because it's massive at the moment. And I feel like even I've done very little research into it, but I've got crippling health anxiety, so I do research a lot of things I use, but I don't think people are aware of how many chemicals and toxins are in everyday products, or even just in like things around their air and where they are. And the big one I wanted to ask you about was the average shampoo that people are buying in the stores, or shower gel, even just body wash. How many chemicals and toxins are in those? Because I was pretty like astonished when I realized it.
Well, every brand is different, but you got microplastics and all that stuff. The big things to look for is SLS, sodium lauryl sulfate. That's the surfactant that makes it's the grease cutter in your super soaps like Dawn dish soap. The best use for Dawn dish soap is a bug killer. You can put like 2 tablespoons in a pint and a half bottle, the rest of it water with a squirt gun, and you can squirt a wasp flying through the air and it'll spin out like you're duck hunting and hit the ground. It's that lethal for ants and all kind. One of the best bug killers out there because it's not so strong of a neurotoxin for all that. But that's what makes Dawn so powerful is that SLS. That was one of the biggest things that's in there. And when you look at body washes, shampoos, and all that, coconut base is a big thing. Years ago, we had somebody who had $100 word for this diagnosis, this rare bladder problem that we started working with. We get to resolve it, and then she'd come back and it'd be all flared up again, and we'd resolve it and get flared up again. That happened 2 or 3 times, and I just stopped and go, "What's going on with you? What are you doing when you're feeling better?" She goes, "Well, I'm young, I'm married, and I feel good, and me and my husband we like to get intimate." And I said, "So, do you need to use a lubricant? Because are you too dry for that?" "Oh, yeah, we use lubricant." "What do you use?" "We use coconut oil." "Well, let me check that." And I look at her chart. She's highly allergic to coconut oil. And we test her, and that was what was causing this $100 word of this rare disease, but she didn't want to let it go and just change to something, gave her the option of some really clean aloe products. She didn't want to let it go. She just didn't want to because they like the coconut. But coconut's an estrogen disruptor. And women that are using coconut products as body washes that are rinsing across their genital area can just inflame their whole reproductive system in this huge way and put it on fire. Those are probably the two top things in your shampoos and body washes, SLS and coconut.
Things like that, and you mentioned microplastics, which I will circle back to, but things like that, and I've done some research and seen some of the chemicals, and they do some really crazy things over time. Maybe not at the moment, but over time they will. Do you think people could benefit from doing one of those allergy tests regularly?
Okay, good question. When you look at the most standard of the allergy test, it's called a RAS test. It's a bunch of pins they stick your skin with, and they have you come back and they read that. That's the most expensive, inaccurate test you can have. If you take the blood test, the serum test, I talked to some people who are coming out with one of these when I was young, just been practicing, coming out with these new food intolerance testing. And I thought, wow, well, that's going to be really great. Well, those tests are only 2 to 3% accurate. 20 years ago, a full bloom of those tests from the best lab in the world was $2,100. Actually, no, it was 2,300, 750 in 4 sections. So the reason why they're so inaccurate is they're testing for primarily IgE responses, some of the IgM responses, but those responses only account for 2 to 3% of the potential response that goes on with food intolerances. So those tests are completely inaccurate. The only accurate way to test food intolerances is somebody who has integrity, who doesn't have an agenda, that does muscle testing. Oh, 95 to 97% accurate, depending on who it is. But most people do the muscle testing aren't honest where they're testing, and they're just using it as another marketing gimmick to sell product, and then there's no accuracy in it whatsoever. We Recently, one of the probably the top functional medicine doc in the world, Mark Hyman, put on a podcast that their extensive testing is 100 tests. We're 4.5 times that in everybody that we see. People think that's absolutely insane. But I was talking to somebody just the other day about that, and they've been to at least a dozen other docs that do muscle testing. They've never experienced anyone who's so thorough, so many cross checks with so many things, looking at every aspect of every metabolic function that's gone on, like what we do. But to help the people that we can't see, you have to test at that kind of level. And that's accurate. So those are your caveats. The best testing for environmental toxicity, for finding where it is, for food intolerances, all that is muscle testing by far. If the person doesn't have an agenda, if they're honest, and if they're well equipped and they really understand physiology, those are the three absolute requirements to make it a good tool.
It's safe to assume that most people walking around have got microplastics in their blood. They've got chemicals and toxins because they're using products that are they're there by hand. They're just close to them. What diseases do you see developing to more a common case in the future, considering that we're exposed to all these products that are so processed?
Okay, it's not so much a certain disease because those show up in different places, but this is a process that is typically the root cause of virtually all chronic illness. You look at the gut lining, if you hold your fingers up in front of your face, your fingers represent the microvilli in the gut lining. It's all bumpy like that. You got these projections that stick out. Those projections secrete a mucus that fills in between your fingers, caps over the top, and that's where all the microbes in your gut live. The Any kind of inflammatory response in the gut makes the microvilli increase the surface area of your gut 400 times. So it goes from 6 square feet to the size of a tennis court. Any kind of inflammation in the gut makes those microvilli atrophy, so you're just like looking at your knuckles. There's no place to build the mucus, no place for the microbes to hide. Those wash out in the toilet. Pathogens grow. The gut leaks like a sieve. It no longer digests, but it ferments and rots the food. It overloads the entire body with toxins, and it's the toxicity from the gut, leaky gut, toxic bowel, candida infections, the pathology that's going on in there is what sets the stage for every aspect of chronic illness that I've seen. Do I do talks on candida, leaky gut, the root to almost all chronic illness? Because there may be an exception, but in 4 decades, thousands of people, I have not seen an exception yet. I'm open to the fact that there may be one, so I say almost, but I haven't seen one in thousands of people in 4 decades.